There was spaghetti on the stove, still bubbling, still hot, still clinging to the edges of the pot like nothing in the world was wrong. That was the worst part somehow. The normalcy. The little red sauce dots on the white stovetop, while everything else inside me was ripping itself apart. She said it with her hands still wet from rinsing the dishes. Quentin, you deserve to know what I did that night. That night. Not last night. Not a few nights ago. That night. And like some pathetic Pavlovian puppet, I knew exactly which night she meant, even though we've never spoken of it aloud. A night we agreed to forget. It was the night before we got married, 37 years ago, in a rented beach house in North Carolina. The night we swore we'd keep no secrets between us. The night we were almost honest, but not quite. She said she was going out for air. She was gone for 2 hours. I told myself she went for a walk. She said the moon was beautiful when she came back. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "Tomorrow will fix everything." It didn't. I never asked her where she went. Until tonight. A door left open. For 37 years. She sat down across from me like we were about to play cards. I didn't ask her to explain. She just did. No hesitation. I saw him. I had to. Just once before I promised myself to you. I needed to say goodbye. My ears felt like they were stuffed with cotton. I heard the words, but not the meaning. He didn't expect me. I knocked on the door. He opened it. He said my name like I'd been dead for years. I think I mumbled something. Probably, "Laura Lee, stop." She didn't. I told him I was marrying you in 12 hours. I told him I chose you. I meant it. But then he touched my hand and said, "You don't have to." I wanted to scream, throw something, smash a plate. But all I could do was sit there like a guy in a dentist's chair, paralyzed, nodding as someone drills into your skull and tells you to relax. "We didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. That line, that disgusting, cowardly line. That's when my hands started shaking. It was slow, software. Like the last page of a book we both already knew the ending to. I asked her one question. Just one. Why now? She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Because he died this morning." And I realized I still think about him. Every week, every time I pass a red bicycle, every time I hear thunder. And I thought maybe I'd buried it, but I didn't. I just buried you under it instead. I don't remember standing up. I just remember the feeling in my legs, like I'd stepped off a moving train, and that stupid spaghetti still simmering behind me. I didn't leave the house. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the spaghetti. I sat on the bottom stair like a dog that just got yelled at, dizzy, cornered, stupid. She had already gone upstairs by the time I realized I was gripping the banister so tight my knuckles were white. I must have stayed there for an hour, maybe more. The light above the stove flickered once, and it startled me like a gunshot. Every part of me felt out of sync, like my brain was moving 5 seconds behind the rest of the world. Her voice, her tone. That's what kept replaying in my head. She didn't sound sorry. She didn't cry or ask for forgiveness or say, "It was a mistake." She told me like she was reporting a weather change, like I was the one who had been living a lie, not her. Eventually, I stood up. My knees cracked. I walked past the kitchen without looking at the stove. I opened the door to the garage and stared at my toolbox for no reason at all. Then I turned right back around and climbed the stairs slowly, step by step, like I was dragging my own coffin behind me. Her light was on. The door was cracked open 2 inches, like an invitation or a warning. I still don't know which. I pushed it open and saw her lying on the bed, curled up with her back to me, fully clothed, like she had braced herself for impact and then forgot to breathe. "I need to ask you something," I said. She didn't move. "Okay. Did you love him more than me?" Silence. I almost turned and walked away, but then she spoke, quietly, precisely. "Not more, just differently. He was like a match. You were the fireplace." That line punched me in the throat harder than if she'd screamed. Yes, I did. I still do. A match. I was a fireplace. So she lit herself on fire for him and came home to warm herself by my stability. That's what I was. A structure. A goddamn structure. No wonder I always felt like I was carrying the full weight of our life while she floated above it, untouched. "I need to tell you something too," I said. And I hadn't planned on it. I didn't even know I was going to say it until the words started falling out of my mouth. I saw the card. The one he sent you 2 years ago. It was in your sweater drawer, the one with the wooden handle. I opened it looking for cold medicine. I read it. Now she turned. Her eyes were wide, but not with guilt, with relief. You knew? I didn't know what it meant, I lied. It just said, still dreaming of the red bike, always D. And you smiled when you read it. I watched you smile. I didn't ask because I think I didn't want to know. Her voice was barely a whisper. You always knew, Quentin. You just didn't want to admit it. She was right. I had known. In fragments. In the way she sometimes sighed at dinner for no reason. In the fact that she kept old cassette tapes, even though we didn't own a player. In the way she hated our front porch light because it was too yellow, when I knew it reminded her of something. I stood there for a long time. Then I said something I never thought I'd say. I want to meet him. Her eyebrows furrowed. What? I want to see the man who haunted our marriage. I want to look him in the face and understand what made you burn 37 years of your life just to feel that, whatever that was. She sat up fully now. You can't. Why not? She looked away. Because he's not dead, she said. Not exactly. Not exactly. That phrase rattled around in my skull like a coin in an empty jar. Not exactly dead? What the hell did that even mean? I asked her 3 times, in 3 different ways, but all she did was look down at her hands like they were someone else's. Like they might confess for her if she waited long enough. He's alive, she finally said, but he's not reachable. I stood there, half in the room, half out. I had one hand on the doorframe like I was holding myself up, like gravity had suddenly gotten stronger just in our bedroom. I was trying not to scream. I was trying not to fold in half and sob like a child. I was trying to be the fireplace again. I didn't want to be. I wanted to be the goddamn match for once. Start over, I said, my voice low. Tell me everything. She nodded once and took a breath that sounded like it hurt. 2 years after we got married, I got a letter. No return address, no name, just a photograph inside. It was him, Denny, at some kind of clinic. You could see it in the background, a white vinyl sign, Sun Hollow Rehabilitation Institute. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth had gone dry. I knew that place. My older cousin went there after a bad car accident, brain trauma, memory damage. It had a reputation, the kind of place families visited once and then stopped talking about entirely. He was in a car crash a year after the wedding, she said quietly. Drunk driver. He wasn't the one driving. The other guy died. Denny survived, but not all of him made it back. And you didn't tell me this why? I asked, almost choking on the words. She looked at me like I had asked why fire was hot. Because I didn't want you to ever know he still existed. I wanted it to stay buried, and for a while, it was, until last month. What happened last month? Another pause, longer this time, like she was deciding between telling me the truth or detonating it. I got another letter, she said. Same handwriting, no signature, just one sentence. He's asking for you. The room spun a little. I had to sit on the edge of the dresser. I felt like I was in a dream where nothing fits. Nothing makes sense, but everything hurts in a way that feels too sharp to be fake. You didn't go see him, did you? She hesitated, and that was enough. I didn't speak to him, she insisted. Not really, I just went to the facility. I saw him through a window. He didn't recognize me. He kept rocking in his chair, muttering something about a red bicycle. I didn't go in. I swear on everything I have left in this world, I didn't go in. I stared at her for a long time. Then I stood up. But you wanted to. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said the one thing that made my skin go cold. Quentin? I think he remembers me. I laughed, but it came out jagged, like a cough. He muttered about a bike, and you think that means he's in love with you from behind a padded wall. It wasn't just a bike, she said. It was the bike. The one he bought me the summer before senior year. The one with the cracked white seat and the bell that sounded like a toy. The one we left behind when we ran out of gas and walked 8 miles to a motel in the rain. No one else would know that. I stood there, stunned. Then I said something awful, something I still regret, something I meant at the time, even though I knew how much it would cut. I wish you had just slept with him. That would have been easier. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She just nodded. Me too. I didn't speak to her for 3 days. We lived in the same house, ate the same food, brushed our teeth in adjacent sinks, but I didn't say a single word to her. I grunted. I nodded. I opened doors and closed them gently so I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me slam one. But I didn't speak. Not to her. Not to anyone. It's astonishing how quickly silence becomes a weapon. By the end of day 1, she started walking slower in the hallway. By day 2, she left food on my side of the table, but didn't eat herself. On day 3, she tried to put her hand on my arm as I passed her in the living room. I flinched like she was holding a knife, but none of that mattered. Not really, because in the back of my mind, something had already started to form. A plan, or maybe more like an infection. It started as a question, grew into an impulse, and by the end of day 3, it was a decision. I was going to find him, if he was still alive. If he was still inside that damaged shell of a man, rocking back and forth in a facility 2 counties away, then I wanted to see him. I needed to. Not to fight, not even to confront. I wanted to know what it was about this man, this ghost, that had kept my wife half-anchored in another life for nearly 4 decades. I waited until she left for the pharmacy. She had a standing appointment every Thursday afternoon, and she always took the long route through the park. That gave me about 90 minutes. I went into her closet, not even pretending to feel bad about it. She kept a shoebox behind her winter coats. Inside it was everything I needed: letters, notes, photographs, the second envelope, even a visitor's pamphlet from Sun Hollow. The map on the back was circled in red ink. My hands trembled as I copied it into my phone, memorizing the exit numbers. Then I saw something that almost made me drop the box. A sketch. Hand-drawn. Charcoal on cream paper. Slightly smudged from what looked like fingerprints. It was of her, Lorraine, but younger. So much younger it hurt. And more than that, it was intimate in a way I could never replicate. The way her mouth curved up on one side, the way her eyelids drooped when she was tired. It wasn't just her face, it was her soul. He had drawn her soul. I stuffed everything back into the box and closed the closet before my legs gave out. I went downstairs, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to Sun Hollow without telling anyone. The place looked like a country club trying very hard not to fall apart. White vinyl siding, a big roundabout with a cracked fountain in the center. 2 Canadian geese were nesting in it. The woman at the front desk smiled like I was a confused relative looking for a lost uncle. "Are you here to visit someone?" she asked. I almost left. Right then. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I could feel sweat dripping under my collar, even though the lobby was over-air conditioned, but I stayed. "Yes," I said. "His name is Dennis Alder." She typed, clicked, frowned. "He's not taking visitors right now," she said. "He had a behavioral episode last week, still under restricted access." "What kind of episode?" "I'm not allowed to say, sir." I leaned in. "Please, can I see him through the glass? I don't even need to speak to him. I need to see him." Something must have shown in my face, whatever was left of my dignity or pride or sanity, because she softened. She glanced over her shoulder, then stood up and said, "5 minutes. Don't make noise, and don't touch the glass." She led me down a carpeted hallway that smelled like antiseptic and fabric softener. Every door was closed, numbered in gold plaques like hotel rooms, but hers stopped at 213. Inside was a single man, sitting in a recliner. The television was off. A box fan whirred softly in the corner. The man was staring at his own hands like they had betrayed him. He was thinner than I expected. Gray hair, but still thick. Sharp cheekbones. Hollow eyes. He looked like a painting that had been left in the rain. Still recognizable, but warped. And then, as I stood behind the glass, barely breathing, he suddenly looked up. Right at me. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe confusion. Maybe fear. Maybe nothing at all. But he smiled. Slow. Familiar. Then he mouthed something. One word. Over and over. Fireplace. I didn't remember walking back to the car. I don't remember saying thank you to the woman at the front desk or passing the fountain with the geese again. All I remember is gripping the steering wheel like it might launch me through the windshield. My mouth was dry, my ears were ringing, my pulse was tapping behind my eyes like a drum. He said it. He said fireplace. The word Lorraine used when she described me, the word she claimed she'd never said to him, but he said it. With a calm, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting years just to deliver that single word to me. How? How did he know? He didn't even blink when he saw me, just that slow grin and that word on repeat, like a spell he'd been saving. I sat in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes, engine running, windows fogging slightly in the late afternoon humidity. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be anywhere. I wanted to crawl out of my skin and disappear, but I couldn't, because something didn't add up. Something was off. And for the first time in my life, I let myself chase that suspicion instead of swallowing it. When I finally pulled into the driveway, Lorraine's car was already there. She was sitting on the porch steps, arms wrapped around her knees, looking like someone waiting for the end of the world. When she saw me, she stood up fast. "You went there," she said. No anger, just defeat. "I did," I replied, stepping out of the car. "I saw him." She nodded slowly, biting her lower lip. "Did he?" "He said one word," I interrupted. "Fireplace." She blinked, staggered back a half step like I'd shoved her. Then something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or something worse. Recognition. I took a step toward her. "You said you never told him that it was your way of describing me, your metaphor, your guilt-wrapped apology for loving someone else. But he said it, like he knew exactly what it meant." She didn't answer. Her arms were crossed now, but not in a defensive way. More like she was holding herself together with her own body. "You want to tell me what's going on?" I asked. My voice was cracking. I didn't care. Then she said something that made my stomach twist into knots. "It's not the first time he said that to someone." I froze. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. Then, in the quietest voice I've ever heard her use, she said, "Quentin, you're not the first person he's said it to. You're not the first husband." There was a long, awful silence between us. A silence packed so tight with tension, it could have cracked glass. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Are you saying there were others?" She looked away. "Not exactly, but he's said the word before. In therapy. In group sessions. To nurses. Always fireplace. No one ever knew what it meant. They thought it was a fixation, a code, something benign. But when I visited and heard him say it to a nurse, I froze. I shook my head. "Why?" "Because," she said, eyes glassy, "the nurse's name was Marissa, and her husband had died the year before, in their house, by the fireplace." My heart dropped. She continued, voice trembling now. "I asked around. I started putting things together. A man who visited 5 years ago. Same thing. His wife had passed after a gas leak in their home. Her last photo was by a fireplace. Denny whispered it to him, too." My whole body went cold. "Lorraine," I said, barely able to get the words out, "are you telling me this man has been repeating the same word to people who lost their spouses by fireplaces?" She nodded. "I don't think he ever forgot," she said. I think he sees things, knows things, or maybe..." She stopped. "Maybe what?" She took a long, shaking breath. "Maybe I never really knew him at all." And that was the moment I realized something I never wanted to admit. Not to her, not to myself, not even on this anonymous little forum. It wasn't just my marriage that was haunted. It was me. That night, I didn't sleep. Lorraine tried to come into the bedroom, but I told her no. Not with anger, just flatly. I think she was almost relieved. She made a bed on the couch downstairs. I could hear her shifting under the blanket until sometime after midnight. And then she finally went still. Or maybe she just gave up pretending to sleep. I stared at the ceiling. Every 30 seconds or so, I'd hear the old house creak, the wood expanding, the floor settling, noises I'd heard 1,000 times, but now felt almost staged, like I was in a play and the props were getting impatient. I kept replaying that moment behind the glass. Denny mouthing fireplace. That little smile like he'd won. That strange clarity in his eyes, even while the rest of him looked like he'd been erased and drawn back by an unsteady hand. And I couldn't stop asking myself, why me? Why that word? Why now? Around 2:15 a.m., I finally got out of bed. I didn't turn on the light. I just walked through the hall, down the stairs, and into the garage. The air smelled like old paint and fertilizer. I flipped the switch and everything buzzed to life in cold, sterile white. There was a small trunk on the top shelf. It had been there since before we moved into this house. Lorraine said it came from her aunt's estate. old books and letters. I'd never opened it, but now I couldn't stop looking at it. I pulled over the stepladder, climbed up, and dragged the trunk down carefully. It was heavier than I expected. Dust slid off the lid like ash. I brought it into the den, set it on the coffee table, and opened it with a rusted latch. Inside, there were envelopes, about a dozen, tied with green string. Below them, a small photo album. But it wasn't filled with our memories, not even Lorraine's family. They were all photos of him. Denny, different haircuts, different years, sometimes with a dog, sometimes in the mountains. Sometimes smiling at the camera, other times staring through it like he could see the person holding it, wasn't meant to be there. And then I found something that didn't belong at all. A charcoal sketch. Not of Lorraine, not of me. It was our fireplace, drawn perfectly. Right down to the chipped brick in the bottom left corner, the crack in the mantel, the uneven hearthstone I'd always meant to fix. But the drawing looked older, like it had been made before the renovation, before we redid the living room 10 years ago, which meant Denny had been here, or at least he'd seen this fireplace before we ever moved into this house. But how? I dropped the sketch and stumbled back. My breath was shallow, my chest hurt. I felt like someone had lit a fuse and jammed it down my throat. I picked up the envelope on top of the pile. It had no name, just a date, April 5th, 1997. That was the year our daughter, Mel, broke her arm falling off the swing set. That was the year Lorraine told me she'd started writing again, spending hours in the guest room with the door closed. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in tight, slanted cursive. He doesn't forget, even when they say he's empty. He told me about the snow before it came, about the noise in the chimney, about the way the stone would crack if I left the fire burning too long. He knew things. He said he had to watch. That watching was the only way he could stay close, that he never meant to choose this, but he had to, because I said goodbye when I wasn't ready, and he took that as a promise instead. I dropped the page. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just guilt. This wasn't just memory. This was something else, something inside the house, something Lorraine had known about for decades, something she had kept quiet because she thought I'd never believe her. And the worst part, I was starting to think I did, because just then, in the dead silence of our empty house, I heard something, a sound I hadn't heard in years. The fireplace cracked, and something shifted behind it. The sound wasn't just a crack, it was shifting, like something loosening from inside the stone itself. I froze on the edge of the coffee table, still holding the envelope in one hand and the sketch in the other. The room had gone so quiet, I could hear the electricity in the light bulbs. That soft, high-pitched hum you never notice until everything else stops. I stared at the fireplace. For most people, it's a fixture, a design choice, a cozy backdrop for holidays. But in that moment, it felt like a wound in the wall. A mouth that had been pretending to be brick, something old and tired, and finally ready to open. I stepped closer. The room didn't feel like mine anymore. This was the same living room where we'd raised Mel, where we hosted Thanksgiving every year, where we once watched all of Twin Peaks on VHS, but now it was like the furniture didn't recognize me. Like the house had been playing along for 37 years and just realized I was the only one who didn't know the rules. I knelt in front of the fireplace. The air was cold, not just cool, wrong, like basement air, like hospital air. And the stones, they were pulsing with it. I pressed my hand against the lower left brick, the cracked one, the one Denny had drawn years before we'd even moved in. And to my absolute disbelief, it moved under my fingers. A click, a soft, clean click, like a hidden latch. I pushed harder, and the brick slid back with a smoothness that sent ice through my spine. Behind it was a cavity, a narrow gap in the wall, just deep enough to hold something wrapped in dark cloth. I reached in and pulled it out, hands shaking, breath ragged. My fingers were numb. I sat back on the carpet and unwrapped the cloth. It was stiff, old, musty. Inside was a small blackened audio cassette. The label was faded, but one word had been scratched into it with something sharp. Lorraine. I felt nauseous. I didn't even remember owning a tape player anymore. But something in my bones told me. Lorraine kept one. Of course she did. I went upstairs, quietly, slowly, like walking through a dream where the floor might give way at any moment. Her studio, the guest room, was still arranged exactly the same. The typewriter on the desk, the locked drawers, the cheap cassette player on the shelf with a single headphone jack and a fraying power cord. I sat down, plugged it in, and slid the tape inside. I pressed play. Silence for the first few seconds. Then a voice. His voice. Denny. Younger than at Sun Hollow, but clear, sharp. He sounded tired but focused, like someone who had practiced the same speech 100 times. "Lorraine, if you're hearing this, I'm dead. Or close enough. They say I'm not right, that I see things that aren't real, but I know what I saw that night. I know what we did, and I know what you're still doing now." There was a pause, a breath. Then, "He's not who you think he is. He wasn't supposed to survive me. He was supposed to end it. You told me you'd close the door, Lorraine. You told me the promise was for me." The tape crackled. "But you opened it. You opened it when you married him, and now it's watching. You've been feeding it, not with blood. With time, with silence. Every year you kept it hidden, it grew teeth." I couldn't move. My mouth went dry. The room felt like it was shrinking around me. My heart was pounding so hard it shook the headphones. "If he finds this tape, if Quentin ever hears this, then you failed. And I'm sorry, Quentin. I really am. I didn't want you in this. But she never let me go. Not really. She built a life with you, but she never buried me. And now it wants you too." There was a long hiss, and then the final words. "The fireplace isn't just a place. It's a door. I don't know what's on the other side anymore. But I know this. The next time it opens, someone doesn't come back." Click. Silence. I sat there, the player humming quietly in my lap, and felt everything inside me shift out of place. Every memory, every kiss, every quiet Tuesday dinner, rearranged. I hadn't married a woman with a secret. I'd married a gatekeeper. I sat on the floor of her studio until sunrise. The tape was still in the player. The air felt lighter, strangely enough, like something had finally exhaled after holding its breath for decades. I didn't move for a long time. Not because I was scared anymore, but because I finally understood something I hadn't been willing to admit. I was part of it all along, not a victim, not a casualty. I was a keeper too, of silence, of routine, of polite avoidance. I had known there were things she couldn't say. I had felt it all those years, the weight she carried that never really got lighter, even during the best days of our life. And I chose not to ask. I stood up around 6. The light outside was soft, the kind of gold you only get when the world is quiet enough to notice it. I walked downstairs. Lorraine was sitting on the porch again, wrapped in the old green blanket from our college days. She was awake. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying anymore. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She just nodded, no words. I sat down beside her. We looked out at the yard. The trees were starting to glow with the sunrise. "I found the tape," I said. "I know," she replied. We sat in silence, not the kind that punishes, the kind that holds space. After a long time, I asked her the question I'd been holding for years. "Why didn't you let him go?" She blinked. "Because I was afraid he'd take everything with him. That if I buried him completely, the part of me that had loved him, really loved him, would die too. And I didn't think I was strong enough to lose that version of myself." I nodded slowly. I understood, more than I wanted to. "I think it's time," I said. She looked at me. "Time for what?" "To shut the door." We went inside together. She took my hand. Her fingers were cold, but steady. We stood in front of the fireplace like it was an altar. I pulled the brick again, removed the cavity's contents, the cloth, the tape, and brought them out to the fire pit in the yard. We didn't say anything. I lit a match. She set down the bundle, and we watched it burn. Not in a dramatic, ceremonial way, just quiet. Final. We poured a glass of wine later that night, sat on the couch together, listened to an old record we hadn't played in years. When she leaned her head on my shoulder, I didn't flinch. I didn't stiffen. I let it happen. Because the truth is, I still loved her, even after everything. And maybe that's what makes a marriage last. Not perfection. Not full honesty every minute of every day. But the willingness to walk through the haunted parts, together, and come out clean on the other side. Not the same, but still holding hands.